This video will cover the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force. I'm Nicholas, and you're watching the Law Enforcement Agency Information Channel. The DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force is a federally established and federally focused task force located in DC that focuses on combating crimes and upholding federal immigration and public safety laws. It does this through, it does this through security patrols and law enforcement coordination, particularly and especially at highly populated areas in DC, such as malls, subways, train stations, government buildings, major parks, and any real place where there is a large populated presence. It focuses. Its real mission is to prevent and deter homeland security threats, such as terrorism, violent crimes, immigration crimes, and much more. Like I said, it is a federal task force composed of composed of federal agencies. Now the reason why federal agents and military officers are even allowed to patrol in municipalities, like in this case in DC. The reason why they're able to patrol throughout DC like this, it's very unique and rare, but the reason why they're able to do in DC is because it's much easier for the president to send federal agents and military troops to DC than it is in other municipalities, because DC is a federal district and a federally controlled area or federally founded area, and it's very it's much more controlled by the federal government and influenced by the federal government. So yeah, it's much easier. Some specific duties of the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force include patrolling highly populated areas, malls, tunnels, any subways, pretty much any very populated area. Investigating and finding and arresting wanted criminals, finding, arresting, and deporting illegal immigrants, monitoring the city's sanctuary status, because DC is a sanctuary city, and just making sure that it's not that their laws based that their sanctuary laws, their local sanctuary laws, aren't violating any federal laws. Coordinating with fellow federal officials, federal civilian and military officials. Enforcing federal laws. Also, of course, finding and removing graffiti off of federal buildings. They will also very often, members of their task force will very often also remove homeless encampments or tents off of federal property, because they can't really do that off of local property, because that is the job of local law enforcement officials. However, they do that very often off of federal property, because homeless encampments and graffiti are typically not allowed on federal property. Those are their primary duties. Some agencies or specific departments that have agencies involved within the task force include the U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of the Interior, and a few others, but those are the primary executive departments with agency members of the task force. Speaking of which, specific agency members of the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force include again, both law enforcement, non-law enforcement, and military federal agencies. But these include the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, just trying to think of others. I think that's it for the Department of Homeland Security. And then also, of course, the FBI, or Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Marshal Service, or USMS, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF, the U.S. Park Police, or USPP, the National Park Service Law Enforcement Ranger Division, let's see, the U.S. Army Military Police, the U.S. Army, specifically the D.C. National Guard and other National Guard forces, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, more specifically the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. But yeah, those are the primary federal agencies involved in the actual task force. And it is also important to note that while local agencies, while this is a federal task force, the DC, Safe and Beautiful Task Force, while it is a federal task force, and is officially only composed of federal agencies, they do very often work with members of the federal members of the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force do very often work with local officials. For example, crimes witnessed by, let's say, for example, local crimes because members of the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force are federal officials, they can't really do that much about local crimes because it's not within their jurisdiction. However, they will very often report local crimes if they witness any to local police and prosecutors. Same goes with because DC is not within a state. State crimes wouldn't count, so never mind. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. The DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force was established in May 7th, 2025 by President Donald J. Trump through a federal executive order. Now, it was made to, quote, make Washington, D.C. Safe and beautiful by preventing crime, preserving order, and promoting beautification. It is led currently by the president's Homeland Security Advisor, or the assistant to the president for Homeland Security. There is this very common misconception that you need to be a member or former member of the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force in order to join the CBP, or U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Now, let me put it straight out to you. That is not true. Being a member or former member of the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force is not a requirement to joining the CBP, nor is it for any federal law enforcement agency I know of. This is just in general too. Being a member of a task force, there's literally no federal law enforcement agency that requires you to have prior experience in a task force. The basic requirements to joining a federal law enforcement agency are education, physical fitness, citizenship, and clean records. Most federal law enforcement agencies do not require prior law enforcement or military experience. Of course, it is helpful. However, it is not a requirement. So, hope that really made it clear.